The first 12 Star Wars figures are now toy legends for starting what is one of the all-time best-selling lines. Demand for these figures was insane and toy shops couldn't keep their pegs full for longer than 5 minutes due to the collect them all mentality. Kenner's next step is arguably their biggest masterstroke. They released world-building characters. These weren't just your heroes and villains, but backgrounders that flesh out that Cantina playset you had. Hi, I'm Chris Cook, and this is Vintage to Modern, Kenner's Star Wars 20-back. Okay, so to clarify, the Star Wars 20-back is the second wave of Star Wars figures that actually came single-carded. Although they were released individually, there were also some of them bundled in with playsets, like the Sears Cantina Adventure playsets. This included Greedo, Hammerhead, Snaggletooth and Walrusman, all for the first time. Snaggletooth is a slightly different character, but again, that's one for another video. First up is Greedo, and it's hard to argue that this version of the character is anywhere near screen accurate. It's got roughly the right sort of shape, and the hands look pretty close to what the actual alien looks like, but as far as an actual figure in itself, it's not even close. Hasbro has released a Greedo on a vintage styled cardback in 2006's The Saga collection, and the figure that accompanies that cardback is amazing. Fantastic update to their previous versions of this figure, and with a gorgeous painted detail to match the sculpting. Highly recommend picking this one up. Hammerhead is an odd character. I'm not sure how many aliens you'll find in a blue swimsuit, but apparently there is at least one in the Star Wars Cantina. Now, the original Kenner figure could be found with eyes that look to the left, to the right or dead ahead, but all of them hold about the same sort of value. Now, so far Hasbro haven't actually released Hammerhead on a vintage style cardback, and the only figure that's come close to being good enough would be the Saga Collection's Momaw Nadon. Now, it is a lovely sculpt, but if we are looking to get one onto a vintage cardback, it does need to be super articulated. This one currently only has articulation at the shoulders, legs and his head. That said, it is a stunning figure and one that works brilliantly well in any Cantina diorama. Snaggletooth here is another odd character. He was initially created to rectify a mistake that Kenner made by releasing the blue, taller Snaggletooth in the Sears Cantina Adventure playset. This version is also actually the first expanded universe character into the Kenner line. The cardback actually depicts a character called Zutton from the Star Wars Holiday Special. Now, so far Hasbro haven't released a vintage cardback of Snaggletooth. The closest we have is actually a Zutton character from the Power of the Jedi line. But if you are a staunch believer in that the actual Snaggletooth from the Cantina is the one that should be on this cardback, then the Snaggletooth from the villain set in the original The Vintage Collection run is your best bet. Beautifully articulated, excellent sculpt. This is the one that I feel should probably be put onto a new vintage cardback. Walrusman is an ugly action figure, but as Retro Blasting point out, he really does know how to hold a gat. Another figure that has a rather odd costume choice which doesn't really reflect what's seen in the film, it is still a nice figure. Hasbro have released Ponda on a vintage style cardback in the original The Vintage Collection run, and this is an excellent figure, absolutely loaded with articulation, multiple parts to recreate whichever moment within the scene you want, and even interchangeable hands to reflect both versions of that. This figure was also re-released recently in the Black Series line, so I don't think we're likely to see this one released anytime soon. Good luck hunting down that Vintage Collection version. Now, I know I said that this wave was all background characters, but Luke Skywalker here in his X-Wing pilot outfit is actually one that doubled as all of the other Rebel pilots, Biggs, Wedge, Dak, throughout the rest of the saga. This is a lovely cardback in the Kenner style, and Hasbro did recreate this in the Saga collection. The figure that came with that card is still a very nice figure, although I would say that a new head sculpt would improve it if they wanted to have another go at this. R5-D4 shares much of the same body parts as the original R2-D2 figure does, except for obviously a new dome. The cardback here has been recreated in the Vintage Collection, again for R5-D4. The figure that came with that, however, was the Builder Droid sculpt. Now, while this is very versatile sculpt, it isn't the best one that's out there, and the Saga Collection version is actually a nicer figure. At this point though, I can't see Hasbro re-releasing R5-D4 anytime soon, so again it's one that you'll have to track down if you want him carded. The Kenner Death Star droid is a figure that is always plagued with loose limbs and flaking paint. The vac metalizing clearly wasn't meant to last 40 years. Now so far, Hasbro haven't released any sort of Death Star droid on a vintage style cardback, and the closest we have as a figure would be MB-RA7 from the Legacy Collection Build-A-Droid line. Now this is a nice figure, but if we are looking to get all of them onto a vintage card, this figure absolutely needs to be vac metalized or certainly as shiny as possible, and the MB-RA7 figure doesn't quite fit that. It'll be interesting to see how they handle this one, but fingers crossed that they can get one out in the near future. Rounding out the wave is the Powerdroid. This is another figure to add to your growing army of droids that you could have stood outside your Jawa Sandcrawler. It's a lovely little figure, and it also had that wonderful clicking function as part of it. A rather odd style of cardback, but it's still very distinctive, shall we say. Now again, this is one that Hasbro haven't put onto a vintage style cardback yet. In fact, they haven't actually re-released this exact figure in the modern line. The closest we have is from the Vintage Collection's Droid set, but that was a tan coloured one. Would need a complete repaint and possibly even some tweaks to re-sculpt it to better match the version that the vintage one is meant to represent. Again, fingers crossed that they can release this one during this run of the Vintage Collection. So that is the Kenner Star Wars 20 back. A lovely selection of characters in there and some very nice updated versions that Hasbro have released since. Do you agree with our selections here? Are there better figures that actually would be more worthy of going onto a vintage cardback? Is the Luke one sufficient for what we have at the moment, or do we need a complete resculpt from the ground up? Please let us know in the comments section down below. If you enjoyed the video, please click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to hit that notification button to make sure that you're made aware of any videos as and when we release them. You can also follow us on Instagram and Twitter, both at Toys of the Jedi. Until next time.